One morning while I was gardening, my neighbor stepped through the gate with shocking news. Your son and daughter-in-law have been sneaking into your house late at night. Those words left me so stunned I nearly collapsed. I'd given my son that key for emergencies, not for this. I said nothing. Instead, I installed hidden cameras throughout the house. They thought I was an easy target, a trusting mother who would never suspect her own child. They were wrong. Over the next 4 months, I would teach them a very expensive lesson. I'm so grateful you're here with me. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. It helps me understand this amazing community we're building together. Also, a quick note, this is a fictional story created for entertainment and reflection. Any resemblance to real people names or places is purely coincidental. While the story itself is made up, the deeper message about trust boundaries and protecting yourself carries real meaning and value. The morning sun felt warm on my shoulders as I knelt beside my rose bushes, pruning shears in hand. At 60, I'd learned to savor these quiet Tuesday mornings. Margaret. Harold's voice cut through the stillness. I looked up to find my neighbor crossing Maple Street with urgent steps unusual for a 72-year-old retired police officer. Harold, everything okay? He stopped at my lawn's edge, his face tight with concern. I need to show you something. It's about David. My son's name, spoken with that gravity, sent a chill down my spine. I stood brushing dirt from my gloves. Harold pulled out his phone. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. This isn't easy, Margaret, but you need to know. He turned the screen toward me. Ring doorbell footage timestamped 11:03 p.m. 4 nights ago. I watched David's silver sedan pull into my driveway. My son emerged. Jessica stepped out. They moved to my front door with the ease of people who had a key. They disappeared inside. Keep watching, Harold said quietly. 12 minutes later, they reappeared. David carried 2 bulging shopping bags. Jessica had a tote bag and a box under her arm. They loaded everything into the trunk and drove away. The shears slipped from my hand. There are 3 more videos like this, Harold continued. Same pattern, always around 11 at night, always carrying things out, never bringing anything in. First time was 2 weeks ago. Most recent was Saturday. I couldn't speak. David was my only child. I'd raised him alone after his father passed 18 years ago. Jessica had seemed lovely when they married 5 years ago, and now this. Sneaking into my house at night, taking my things. Thank you for telling me I managed. Harold nodded. I'm here if you need anything. I watched him cross back to his house, then bent to retrieve my shears. My hands were shaking. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying Harold's video. Every creak made me wonder if they were here now. I thought about calling David, demanding an explanation. But a cold voice inside whispered, you need to know more first. By dawn Wednesday, I'd made my decision. At 6 o'clock, I called Tom Bradley. We'd known each other since our children attended the same elementary school. After his divorce, he'd built a career in law and developed an unexpected knack for technology. Margaret, it's early. Everything all right? Tom, I need a favor. It needs to stay between us. A pause. What do you need? Cameras? Hidden cameras? I need to know what's happening in my own home. By noon, Tom had installed 5 cameras throughout my house. One in the living room disguised as a smoke detector, one in the kitchen behind a plant, one in the hallway, one in my study, one aimed at the back door. He set up an app on my phone with motion alerts and live feeds. You're sure about this? Tom asked as he packed up. Whatever you find, you can't unknow it. I'm sure. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone. 6 small squares showed different angles of my home. I was watching myself, a 60-year-old woman surveilling her own life. Wednesday evening crept by with agonizing slowness. I made dinner but barely touched it. Tried to read but couldn't focus. Every few minutes I checked my phone. The house remained still and empty. As the clock ticked past 10:30, my nerves stretched tighter. Would they come tonight? Would Harold's pattern hold? At 11:43, I turned off the living room lights. I needed to maintain the illusion that everything was normal, that I was asleep, unaware, trusting. Tomorrow night, Thursday night. According to Harold's timeline, they were due for another visit. I stared at my darkened phone screen, my reflection ghostly in the glass. If Harold was wrong, I'd apologize to David and we'd laugh about my paranoia. But if Harold was right, I didn't know my son at all, and I needed to find out what he'd become before it was too late. Thursday night, 10:55. I lay in my bed with the lights-off phone clutched beneath the blankets. The screen's glow illuminated my face in the darkness. 6 camera feeds showed my empty house, living room, kitchen, hallway, study, back door. All still, all silent, waiting. Harold's pattern said they'd come tonight. 4 visits all around 11. If he was right, I had 10 minutes. My heart hammered against my ribs. At 11:05, my phone vibrated. Motion alert, back door. I tapped the feed and watched the door swing open. David stepped inside, first Jessica close behind. They moved with practiced ease, no fumbling for light switches. They'd done this before. I pressed the volume up, adjusting my earbuds. Tom's cameras had audio, good quality audio. They walked straight to my study. Through the hallway camera, I watched them disappear inside. I switched feeds. The study camera, hidden behind a row of books on the shelf, gave me a clear angle of my desk. Jessica pulled out her phone and started photographing. My tax returns spread across the desk. My bank statements. The property deed to this house. She moved methodically, no hesitation, snapping picture after picture. David pulled a tape measure from his pocket and began measuring the room's dimensions. 18 by 20, he said, his voice clear through my earbuds. The whole house has to be worth $700,000 easy, maybe more with the market right now. Jessica finished photographing and straightened. The conservatorship paperwork takes 6 weeks minimum once we file. We need her to seem incompetent before then. My breath caught. Conservatorship. The word hit like a physical blow. How fast can we move her? David asked. Depends on how aggressive we want to be. Jessica leaned against my desk in my house, as if she owned it. We need documented incidents, confusion, forgetfulness, unsafe behavior. She's 60 and sharp as hell. No one's going to believe she's suddenly incompetent. They will when she starts seeming unsafe. Jessica's voice was cold, clinical. When she can't trust her own mind anymore, when things go missing and she can't remember where she put them, when she starts having accidents. The word hung in the air. Accidents. What kind of accidents? David's question came quietly. Small ones at first. A fall. Medication mix-up. Nothing obvious. Just enough to make people worry. She paused. Accidents happen to elderly people living alone all the time. Memory fails. Judgment gets impaired. 3-4 months tops and we'll have everything we need for the filing. I was going to be sick. This was my son, my child. The boy I'd raised alone, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, and he was standing in my study discussing how to make me seem incompetent, how to cause me accidents. And after the conservatorship goes through, David asked, we sell the house, move her into a facility, split the assets. Jessica said it like she was discussing a business transaction. You said she has $100,000 in retirement accounts too. About that, plus a $50,000 life insurance policy. Good. The facility costs will eat into it, but there'll still be plenty left. She pushed away from the desk. We should get the appraisal done on the house this week. Quietly. I have a guy who owes me a favor. David nodded slowly. I watched his face on the screen, my son's face, and searched for any sign of hesitation, any flicker of conscience. What do we do first? He asked. Start small. This weekend I'll come over when she's out. Move some things around. Her keys, her reading glasses, little things that'll make her question herself. Jessica smiled. By the time we're done, she'll be begging for help. They moved toward the door. I switched cameras, tracking them through the hallway, past the kitchen, out the back door. The timestamp read 12:17 a.m. The door closed. The lock clicked. The house fell silent. I threw off the blankets and ran, made it to the bathroom just in time. Everything came up dinner bile, the weight of what I'd just heard. I knelt on the cold tile floor, shaking one hand braced against the toilet. 3-4 months tops. Accidents make her seem unsafe. When there was nothing left, I slumped against the bathtub, the tile floor hard beneath me. I'd wanted answers. Now I had them. My son, my David, had just agreed to a plan that would systematically destroy my independence, my credibility, my life. He'd stood in my study and discussed my assets like I was already gone. Discussed accidents, memory failure, making me unsafe. The only question left was how far they'd go to make it happen. Friday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. The horror from Thursday night had crystallized into something harder, colder. If they were going to try to make me seem incompetent, I needed proof that I wasn't. I created a new Google Doc and titled it Evidence Journal. I spent Friday organizing the video files from Thursday night, every frame time-stamped and labeled. By evening, I had everything backed up to 3 different cloud services. If something happened to me, there would be a record. Sunday came too fast. David called that morning. Jessica wants to cook dinner for you tonight, 6 o'clock. That sounds lovely, I said, keeping my voice warm. They arrived promptly, Jessica carrying groceries. She kissed my cheek and I had to suppress a shudder. 3 nights ago, this woman had discussed causing me accidents. Now she was smiling like a devoted daughter-in-law. "I'm making pot roast," she said. "Your favorite." I played my part, set the table, poured wine, made conversation, watched Jessica move through my kitchen like she owned it. The dinner was fine. We talked about safe things, weather, movies, work, nothing about houses or my future. At 7:15, Jessica stood to clear dishes. "You relax, Mom. I'll clean up." "Let me help." "I insist. You've done enough." I sat while she and David cleaned my kitchen. Normal. Familial. Except I was cataloging her every movement. They left at 7:30, Jessica hugging me at the door. "We should do this more often." I closed the door, locked it, walked back toward the kitchen. That's when I smelled it. Gas. That unmistakable rotten egg odor. My heart lurched. I rushed to the stove. The front burner was turned to high-no flame, just gas pouring into my kitchen. I shut it off, immediately opened every window. "Mom." I spun around. David stood in the doorway, Jessica behind him. They'd come back. "I forgot my phone." David stopped sniffing. "Do you smell gas?" Jessica pushed past him, went straight to the stove. Her eyes widened in perfect theatrical alarm. "The stove's on, Mom. The stove was on. I don't know how. This is the 3rd time this month." Jessica's voice rose loud and concerned. She turned to David. "Last week, she left it on after making tea. 2 weeks ago, same thing. I didn't want to worry you, but there was no last week. No 2 weeks ago. She was creating a narrative from nothing." "There was no last week," I said quietly, letting confusion creep into my voice. "I haven't—" "Mom, we've talked about this." David's face showed genuine worry. "You said you'd be more careful." I stared at them. Jessica's eyes held a warning beneath the concern. "Play along. This is how it starts." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I thought I turned everything off." "It's okay." Jessica touched my arm. I didn't pull away. "We're just worried. Maybe we should get you an automatic shut-off system." "Maybe," I said. They stayed 10 more minutes checking the house, making sure I was safe. Then they left Jessica squeezing my hand. "Call if you need anything, anytime." The moment their car disappeared, I went to my computer, pulled up the kitchen camera feed, rolled it back to 6:47 p.m. There was Jessica alone in the kitchen, David visible in the other room putting on his coat. Jessica glanced toward him, then reached out and twisted the front burner to high. No attempt to light it, just gas. She waited 3 seconds, making sure it was running, then walked away. 43 minutes before the discovery. Long enough for gas to fill the space. Long enough to be dangerous. I opened my evidence journal and typed, "Incident number 1, Sunday, November 19th, 6:47 p.m. Jessica deliberately turned stove burner to high without igniting flame. Returned at 7:30 p.m., claiming forgotten phone. Discovered gas, and accused me of leaving it on, claiming 3rd time this month. There was no 1st or 2nd time. Creating narrative of incompetence." David corroborated without question. I saved the file, backed it up. Then I typed one more line. "They've started. How far will they go?" Over the next 2 weeks, I learned exactly how cruel they could be. By the 3rd week, the gaslighting had become routine. Monday through Thursday blurred together manufactured incidents, carefully staged, meticulously documented. Monday morning, Jessica called. "Mom, did you find your car keys? David said you couldn't find them yesterday." I hadn't lost my keys, but I played along. "Let me look." I went to my purse. There they were sitting on top. I checked my kitchen camera footage. 6:42 p.m. Jessica letting herself in. 6:43 p.m. her hand slipping into my purse, depositing the keys. I called back, letting my voice shake. I found them in my purse. I don't remember putting them there. Oh, Mom, this is happening more and more, isn't it? Wednesday, I had a doctor's appointment. David insisted on driving. In the waiting room, I watched him lean close to the receptionist. Just so you know, my mother's been having some confusion lately. Memory issues. The receptionist nodded sympathetically. I sat 10 feet away watching my son establish my incompetence with a stranger. Thursday, my shopping list disappeared from the kitchen counter. I spent 20 minutes searching, growing flustered. That night, camera footage showed David at 3:15 p.m. picking up my list and dropping it in the trash. No hesitation. Each incident followed the same pattern. They created the problem, expressed concern. I performed confusion. They suggested decline. And I documented everything. By Thursday night, my evidence journal had reached 12 pages. Timestamps, video stills, transcribed conversations. Every lie cataloged. Friday morning, I called Harold. Can we meet for coffee? We sat in a corner booth at the cafe 3 blocks away. I showed him everything. The surveillance videos, the gas stove, the keys, the doctor's office, the shopping list. 12 pages of documented psychological warfare. Harold's hands shook as he scrolled through the journal. When he looked up, his eyes were hard. Margaret, you need to call the police now and tell them that my son is moving my keys, throwing away my shopping lists. I kept my voice low. Nothing's been stolen. No one's been hurt. They're just concerned. They're building a case, exactly, for conservatorship. If I go to the police now, it's my word against theirs. A 60-year-old woman claiming her family is gaslighting her. They'll say I'm paranoid, confused, proving their point. Harold processed this. Then what are you doing? Letting them continue. I need the full extent of their plan. I met his eyes. They told me themselves. 3 to 4 months. Small accidents escalating. I need to catch everything. Wait until they make a real mistake. That's dangerous. So is letting them win. He studied me then, understanding crossed his face. You're not just documenting. You're hunting them. They're hunting me. I'm just better at it. Harold leaned forward. What do you need? Keep watching. Keep your cameras running. If anything happens to me, if I end up in a hospital or facility, you have copies of everything. Police, lawyer, media. Whatever it takes. You have my word. Something released in my chest. I wasn't alone anymore. They're stealing my life, Harold. My voice was cold, steady. When this is over, I'm going to take everything from them. He didn't tell me not to. Didn't mention forgiveness or family. He just nodded. Good. Wednesday morning, week 4. 8:30, standing at my kitchen counter, I took my blood pressure medication. 1 small white pill, 10 milligrams with a glass of water. Routine. I didn't look closely. I should have. 30 minutes later, the kitchen tilted. Not gently, violently. The room spun walls blurring into ceiling. Nausea rose sharp in my throat. I gripped the counter, waiting for it to pass. It didn't. My legs felt weak, disconnected. I needed to lie down. My bedroom was upstairs. I could make it. I made it halfway. The landing came up fast when I fell. My hip hit first, then my shoulder. Pain bloomed, but the dizziness was worse. The world kept spinning even though I'd stopped moving. I lay there on the carpet, trying to focus on anything that would stay still. My phone was in my pocket, but my hands shook too much to unlock it. At 10:30, David called. Hey, Mom, just checking in. I hadn't said a word yet. He called knowing something was wrong. I don't feel well, I managed. My voice sounded slurred. What's wrong? Dizzy. I fell. Stay there, I'm coming. 12 minutes later, he was unlocking my door, racing up the stairs, all concern and alarm. Mom, what happened? Just dizzy. We're going to the hospital. He helped me to his car. I closed my eyes against the nausea, counting the minutes, noting his timing. He'd known exactly when to call. At the ER, David did all the talking while I sat in a wheelchair. She fell this morning, very dizzy. She's been having memory problems lately. I think she took her blood pressure medication twice. She forgets sometimes. I hadn't taken it twice. Once, at 8:30, like always. But the nurse nodded, typed, and David's lie became part of my medical record. The doctor checked my blood pressure, 80/50, dangerously low. She listened to David's story about my forgetfulness, my confusion. Has she seen a neurologist? Not yet. We've been trying to get her to go. I watched her type cognitive decline per family report. They kept me 3 hours, ran blood work, monitored my pressure as it slowly climbed toward normal. By afternoon, they discharged me with a neurologist referral and instructions to be more careful with medications. Maybe a pill organizer, the doctor suggested, so you can see what you've taken. I nodded, played the confused patient they expected. David drove me home, walked me inside, squeezed my shoulder at the door. Please be more careful, Mom. The moment his car disappeared, I went straight to my kitchen cabinet, pulled out the pill bottle, photographed it from every angle, label, pills, prescription information. Then I called Carol. Carol Henderson had lived 2 houses down for 8 years, retired from the hospital pharmacy at 64, but she still kept her expertise sharp. I trusted her. Margaret, everything okay? Carol, I need your help. Can you come over about my medication? She arrived in 5 minutes. I told her everything at my kitchen table. The dizziness, the fall, David's convenient call at 10:30, his story at the hospital. I need you to look at these pills. Tell me if they're what they should be. Carol opened the bottle, shook a few pills into her palm. She pulled out a small magnifying glass old pharmacy habit and examined them under the light. Her face went still, then pale. She looked up and I saw confirmation in her eyes. Margaret, her voice was careful, controlled, these aren't the 10 milligrams. Carol stared at the pills in her palm. I sat across from her at my kitchen table, afternoon light slanting through the window. The house was quiet, too quiet. Margaret, she looked up, her face grave. These are 40 milligrams, 4 times your prescribed dosage. The words hung between us. What would that do? I asked, though I already knew. Severe hypotension. Your blood pressure would drop dangerously low, which it did. You'd become dizzy, disoriented. Fall. At your age, a fall can mean broken bones, head trauma. She paused. Stroke. Heart failure. Death. Death, I repeated, not a question, a confirmation. This isn't gaslighting anymore, Margaret. This is attempted murder. Carol's voice shook. You need to call the police, right now, today. Not yet. Not yet. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. They tried to kill you. They tried to make it look like an accident, like I made a mistake. I kept my voice steady. If I go to the police now, what do I have? Pills that someone switched. David will say I must have picked up the wrong prescription. Jessica will cry and say they've been so worried about my confusion. And that medical record from today says cognitive decline per family report. Carol's jaw tightened. She knew I was right. I need more, I continued. I need to know the full extent of their plan, how far they'll go, what else they're willing to do. You're willing to risk your life to ensure they can never hurt me again. I met her eyes. To make sure they pay for everything they've done, yes. Carol sat back processing. Then she stood and went to her purse, pulled out a notepad. Then we document this properly. She wrote for 10 minutes, her pharmacist's precision evident in every line. Professional terminology, specific observations, pill identification, dosage analysis, potential consequences. When she finished, she signed and dated it. I'll have this notarized tomorrow, she said. My statement as a licensed pharmacist. If anything happens to you, Harold has copies of everything, right? Harold has everything. Good. She squeezed my hand. Be careful, Margaret, please. After she left, I sat alone at my table thinking. David and Jessica believed their plan had worked. I'd gone to the hospital. The doctors had documented my confusion. I'd come home shaken and weak. They thought they were winning. I went to my cabinet and carefully transferred the 40 milligram pills back into my prescription bottle. Put it back exactly where it had been. Let them think I suspected nothing. Let them think I was taking their poison pills every morning, trusting and oblivious. Then I went to my bedroom closet, reached behind the stack of sweaters on the top shelf, pulled out the bottle I'd hidden there 2 weeks ago, my real medication filled at a different pharmacy across town, 10 milligrams, safe. I'd known after Thursday night's surveillance that they might try something like this. I'd prepared. From now on, I'd take my real medication from my hidden supply. Every morning, I'd perform the routine at the kitchen counter, but with pills that wouldn't hurt me. They'd watch, they'd wait, they'd think their plan was working, and I'd let them keep thinking that. I opened my evidence journal and typed, Wednesday, week 4. Medication tampering pills in prescription bottle switched from 10 milligrams to 40 milligrams blood pressure medication, 4 times prescribed dosage. Cause severe hypotension, 80/50 dizziness fall with injuries. ER visit. David claimed I double dosed due to confusion. Medical record now states cognitive decline. Carol Henderson, retired pharmacist, licensed examined pills, confirmed 40 milligrams dosage, wrote sworn statement. This constitutes potential murder attempt. Pills photographed, documented backup hidden. Switched tampered pills back to original bottle to maintain appearance of success. I saved the file, backed it up. Then I sat in the growing darkness of my kitchen hands, steady on the table journal open before me. They'd tried to kill me. Made it look like my own mistake, built a medical record to support their story, and I was going to let them think it worked. I'd let them continue, let them escalate, let them incriminate themselves so thoroughly that when I finally acted, there would be no doubt, no escape, no mercy. I'd let them hang themselves, all the way to the end. Monday morning, week 5. The first Monday of the month, my routine for 40 years. I opened the safe in my bedroom closet as morning light filtered through the curtains. Insurance documents, property deed, birth certificate, and my will in its manila envelope. I pulled it out intending my monthly check. Everything in order, everything secure. Something was wrong. I unfolded the document, scanning the familiar language. At the bottom, my signature, except it wasn't. I stared at it. The letters were close, someone had practiced. But the S in Sullivan had its tail curving the wrong direction. Subtle. Almost unnoticeable, unless you'd signed your own name 10,000 times. I went to my desk, pulled out last year's Christmas cards I'd saved. Found one I'd signed to David and Jessica, laid it beside the will. Completely different. The pressure, the angle, the way my A closed, everything. This wasn't my signature. My hands started shaking. I looked at the date on the will, April 8th. April 8th. Memory clicked into place. I pulled out my desk drawer, rifled through my file folder, found my plane tickets. Seattle, April 7th through 10th. Hotel receipt from the Fairmont Olympic. Credit card statement showing charges in Seattle on April 8th, coffee shop, restaurant, bookstore. I'd been in Seattle visiting Judith. I couldn't have signed this will. I read the document with new eyes. My original will had left most of my estate to Charity Children's Literacy Program's cancer research. A portion to David, of course, but the bulk to causes I believed in. This will left everything to David. Everything. The house, the retirement accounts, the life insurance. Total control. And Jessica was named as executor. At the bottom, 2 witness signatures. John Miller, Sarah Johnson. I'd never heard those names in my life. I grabbed my phone and photographed everything. The forged will from every angle, my plane tickets, the hotel receipt, the credit card statement, my real signature on the Christmas card, the fake signature on the will. Then I pulled out my laptop and searched my email, found the confirmation from Judith. So glad you're coming. April 7th to 10th. It's been too long. Screenshot, saved, backed up. I sat on my bed, the forged will in my lap, and let the implications wash over me. They hadn't just planned to take my house, to take my money, to put me in a facility. They'd planned for me to die. You don't forge a will unless you expect it to be executed. You don't change the beneficiary unless you expect to collect. You don't switch out someone's medication to 4 times the dosage unless you're creating conditions you don't expect them to survive. The gas stove, the medication, the medical records documenting my decline, the forged will. They'd been building toward this from the beginning. Every gaslighting incident, every lie to doctors and neighbors, every manufactured moment of confusion. They were creating a narrative elderly woman declining mentally, having accidents eventually has a fatal one. So tragic, so inevitable. And when I died from a fall from medication complications from any number of accidents, they could engineer this forged will would surface. David would inherit everything. Jessica would execute the estate, and no one would question it because everyone already thought I was losing my mind. My phone was in my hand before I realized I'd picked it up. I opened my messages, found Judith's contact. Emergency. Need you here immediately. Someone has forged my will. Can you come? 3 dots appeared. Then, on my way, tomorrow morning. Don't touch anything else. I set the phone down, looked at the forged will, the fake signatures, the wrong date, the change in beneficiaries, evidence of intent, premeditation, planning for my death. I lay back on my bed, the document still in my hands, and whispered the truth I'd been avoiding. They want me gone. Monday afternoon. Judith had left an hour ago after confirming the forgery, telling me to gather every piece of evidence I could before we acted. Now I sat alone in my kitchen laptop, open evening shadows creeping across the walls. I needed to see how they'd done it. I opened the camera app and scrolled backward. 3 weeks. Past the medication incident, past the gas stove, back to week 4. I filtered for Tuesday nights around 11 p.m., their preferred time. Week 4, Tuesday, 11:45 p.m. There. I clicked play. The study camera showed David and Jessica entering. Both wore gloves. That detail alone made my stomach turn. They'd planned this carefully enough to avoid leaving fingerprints. Jessica went straight to my desk, opened the bottom drawer where I kept my will. She pulled it out, read it, then looked at David. The original leaves everything to charity. We get nothing. David's face went pale. Mom changed it when she didn't change it. This has always been her will. Jessica's voice was cold. Your mother planned to give away everything you should inherit, everything we need. She pulled papers from her bag, a new will, practice sheets covered with my signature over and over, someone learning the rhythm of my handwriting. I had a lawyer friend draft this quietly. David stared at the documents. Jess, this is survival. Your gambling debts, my business loans. We're drowning David. This house alone is worth $700,000. Her retirement accounts the life insurance. We need this. I watched my son's face, waiting for him to say no, to walk away, to be the person I'd raised him to be. He reached for the pen. Jessica laid the new will on my desk, positioned it carefully. Then she picked up a pen and signed my name at the bottom. I watched her hand move, practiced confident. The S in Sullivan curved wrong, but she didn't notice. Your witness 1, she said, sliding the document to David. He hesitated for 3 seconds. I counted them. 1, 2, 3. Then he wrote John Miller in careful block letters. Jessica took the pen back and signed Sarah Johnson beside his fake name. There. She picked up a different pen, crossed out the date, wrote in a new one. April 8th, 3 weeks ago. What if someone checks? David asked. By the time anyone investigates, it won't matter. The implication hung in the air. David heard it. I saw him hear it. He didn't ask what she meant, didn't question the timeline, didn't object. He just nodded. They put the forged will back in my drawer, took the original with them, left at 12:03 a.m., gloves still on, carrying away the real documentation of my wishes. The footage ended. I sat in the darkening kitchen and played it again. Maybe I'd missed something. Maybe David had protested and the audio hadn't caught it. Maybe his face had shown reluctance I hadn't seen. I watched it a second time, then a third. Each time I hoped for a different ending. Each time I got the same one. My son picking up that pen. No hesitation after those 3 seconds. Writing a fake name on a forged will. Agreeing to a timeline that assumed I wouldn't be alive to dispute it. I saved the file. Evidence F, forgery. Added it to my cloud backups, my encrypted email, Harold's copies. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. That was the moment I lost my son forever. Not when he started sneaking into my house, not when he lied to doctors about my confusion, not even when he switched my medication to a dangerous dosage. It was when he picked up that pen and signed John Miller without asking what "it won't matter" meant. Because he already knew. They didn't just want my house. They didn't just want my money. They wanted me gone. Permanently. So thoroughly gone that by the time anyone questioned the will, there would be no one left to contradict it. And my son, my only child, had agreed to that with 3 seconds of hesitation and a forged signature. Friday night, 11:20. I sat in my living room phone and hand camera app open in split screen mode. Living room, kitchen, hallway, study, back door, staircase, waiting. At 11:32, the back door opened. David and Jessica right on schedule. But instead of going to my study or kitchen, they went straight upstairs. That was new. I switched to full screen on the staircase camera. They stopped at the second floor landing. Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out a wrench, handed it to David. My chest tightened. "You do it," she said, her voice clear through the audio feed. "Strong enough to put her in the hospital. Confused enough that we can file for emergency conservatorship." David stared at the wrench. "Jess, this could seriously hurt her." "Vinny's people sent photos of our house yesterday." Jessica's tone was flat. "Ice. $95,000, David. 6 more weeks without payment and they'll break your legs. Your actual legs. Is that what you want? 95,000 gambling debts. That's what this had always been about." David knelt at the railing. I watched his hands, my son's hands, grip the wrench and fit it around the first bolt. "Not too loose," Jessica said, shining her phone's flashlight to guide him. "Just enough that it fails under weight. We need it to look like old hardware, not sabotage." He loosened the first bolt, then the second, then the third. The camera captured everything: the angle of the wrench, the rotation of each bolt. His face concentrated and pale. 4 bolts, 5, 6. When he finished, Jessica grabbed the railing and shook it. It wobbled violently, the whole section shifting under her hands. "Perfect," she said. "She always gets up around 2:30 for the bathroom, uses this railing every single time." They left at 12:14. I sat in the dark and checked my phone. 12:17. My bathroom routine happened at 2:30 every morning. It had for 20 years age, and habit made me predictable. In 2 hours and 13 minutes, I would get out of bed, walk to the hallway, put my hand on that railing, and if I put any weight on it at all, it would give way. Second floor landing to the first floor. 12 steps, a long way to fall at 60. I could go upstairs right now, tighten those bolts, save myself. 5 minutes with the wrench from my garage and I'd be safe. But then what they'd try again? A different method, a different night, and I wouldn't see it coming next time. I'd have no footage of the attempt, no proof of intent, no evidence that would hold up when Judith took this to the authorities. If I fixed it now, I'd survive tonight, but I'd never escape. They'd keep coming until something worked. I needed them to believe they'd succeeded, to think I'd used that railing, fallen, been injured badly enough to justify their emergency conservatorship filing. I needed them to make their next move while thinking they'd already won. But that meant leaving those bolts loose for 2 more hours. I set an alarm for 2:25, 5 minutes before my usual routine, enough time to go upstairs with my own wrench, tighten the bolts before I needed to use that hallway. 5 minutes. That was my margin. Then I lay down on the couch, fully dressed shoes still on, and stared at the ceiling. "I'm sorry, Robert," I whispered to the darkness to my husband 18 years gone. He'd always told me to be careful, to be safe, to not take unnecessary risks, but this was the only way. In 3 hours, I would make a choice I hoped I never had to make again. Walk that line between evidence and safety, between justice and survival. The alarm was set. The camera was recording. The bolts were loose. And I had 2 hours and 13 minutes to decide if I was brave enough or desperate enough to see this through. Saturday morning, 2:25. The alarm vibrated against my palm. I'd been awake for the past hour, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I had to do. I stood still, fully dressed. The wrench sat beside the couch where I'd placed it an hour ago after retrieving it from the garage. Heavy, cold, necessary. I walked to the stairs and looked up into the darkness. 13 steps to the second floor landing. Somewhere up there, 6 loosened bolts waited. A trap my son had set for me just 3 hours ago. I started climbing. One hand on the wall, the other gripping the wrench, each step deliberate. My heart hammered so loud I thought it might wake the whole neighborhood. Step 7, step 9, step 13. The landing. I stood there in the dim light filtering through the hallway window. The railing looked completely normal, solid, trustworthy. You couldn't tell that 6 bolts had been loosened, that the whole section was barely attached, waiting for the right amount of pressure to fail. I thought about what would have happened at 2:30. Half asleep, trusting my hand reaching out in the darkness. The sudden give. The fall. 13 steps is a long way down for a 60-year-old woman. I should tighten the bolts now. That was the plan. 5 minutes with the wrench and I'd be safe. But first I needed to see for myself what they'd done. Needed to understand exactly how close they'd brought me to death. I reached out with just my fingertips and touched the railing. A sharp metallic crack split the silence. The entire section lurched outward, bolts tearing free from their anchors like they were made of paper. My body went with it, leaning forward, tilting over 13 steps of empty black space below. For one crystalline, endless second, I saw it all. The hardwood floor rushing up, the impact, my body broken at the bottom, the tragic accident they'd orchestrated. This was what they'd planned, this exact moment. My death disguised as a midnight fall. I threw myself backward with every ounce of strength I had. My shoulder hit the wall hard. I dropped to my knees, gasping. The wrench clattered to the floor beside me. The railing hung at a grotesque angle, now half detached, swaying slightly. A death trap disguised as safety. Inches. I'd been inches from becoming their accident. I stayed on my knees, shaking my heart, threatening to burst through my chest. That would have been me in an hour. Sleepy, unaware, trusting that the railing my husband had installed 20 years ago would hold me like it always had. Instead, I would have grabbed it, felt it give, had one terrible second of understanding before the fall, before the impact, before David got the phone call he'd been waiting for. My hands trembled as I picked up the wrench. I tightened the first bolt, then the second, methodically working through all 6 muscle memory from decades of home maintenance, guiding my hands even though they shook. When I finished, I tested the railing hard, put my full weight on it, pushed, pulled. It held solid. Fixed. Safe. For now. I went downstairs and checked my phone. 3:07 a.m. I called Harold. He answered on the second ring voice alert. Retired cops never really sleep. Margaret? They tried tonight, the staircase. I have it on camera. Silence. Then, are you hurt? No, I fixed it before. My voice cracked. It was close, Harold, so close. I'm coming over right now. No, 6 o'clock. We go to the police today with everything. You're sure you're all right? I'm sure. I looked at the staircase at the railing that had almost killed me. I need to document this while it's fresh. I photographed everything, the railing from multiple angles, the tightened bolts, the wrench, my trembling hands holding it. Then I opened my evidence journal and typed, Saturday week 5/11/32 p.m. to 12:14 a.m. David and Jessica sabotaged second floor staircase railing. 6 bolts loosened to cause catastrophic failure under weight. Camera captured full incident, including discussion of $95,000 gambling debt owed to Vinny and threats of physical harm. Emergency conservatorship mentioned as motive. Jessica directed sabotage. David executed. 2:25 a.m. tested railing before repair. Near complete failure under minimal pressure. Entire section detached. Avoided fall by approximately 4 inches. Immediate mortal danger confirmed. 2:25 to 2:45 a.m. All 6 bolts re-tightened and tested. Railing secured. Evidence preserved via photography and video documentation. I saved the file, backed it up to all 3 cloud servers. Then I sat in my kitchen as darkness slowly faded toward dawn, watching the minutes tick toward 6 o'clock. Toward Harold. Toward the end of silence. Today we would take everything to the police. 4 months of evidence. Irrefutable proof. Tonight I'd survived what they'd planned would be my final night. Tomorrow they would answer for every single thing they'd done. Saturday morning, 6 o'clock. Harold let himself in with his spare key. I was at the kitchen table, laptop open, evidence files stacked. Coffee's fresh, I said. He poured a cup. Tom and Judith, on their way. Tom arrived at 6:25. Judith pulled up minutes later. We gathered around my table. 4 people. 4 months of evidence. Show us everything, Judith said. I opened the videos. Thursday night, the conservatorship plan. Sunday, Jessica and the gas stove. Tuesday, the forgery. David signing John Miller. Friday, the staircase sabotage, $95,000 in debt, Vinny's threats. Carol's affidavit about the 40-milligram pills. The forged will with my Seattle alibi. This morning's photos of the loosened railing. Silence. "This is enough," Judith said. "We call police now." "No," Tom said. "Not yet." "Tom, the evidence is solid, but we have a problem." He tapped the laptop. "Hidden cameras without consent. Defense will argue privacy violation, try to suppress the videos. They were committing crimes," I said. "Doesn't matter. They'll claim videos are edited out of context. Use your supposed cognitive decline against you." Tom's voice stayed calm. "Long trial, competing experts, reasonable doubt." "But a confession," Judith said slowly, "face-to-face on camera, ends it immediately." Tom confirmed. "No ambiguity, no technical defenses." "How?" I asked. "Invite them to dinner tonight. They'll come thinking you don't know, expecting to manipulate you. Instead, show them everything. Tell them you know. Give them two choices." Tom met my eyes. Confess on camera and cooperate with police, or refuse and face maximum charges with zero credit. "That's dangerous," Harold said. "Cornered people are unpredictable." "We'll be at my house watching the feeds," Tom said. 30 seconds away. You say Harold out loud, we come immediately." Judith pulled out her phone. "I'll coordinate with Detective Collins. She'll be ready when you call." "What if they lawyer up?" "Then we proceed with what we have," Judith said. "But when people see proof, they try to explain, justify. They confess without meaning to." I looked at them. Harold, who'd warned me. Tom, who'd given me the cameras. Judith, who'd flown from Seattle. Tonight, 7 o'clock. I typed, "Mom needs to talk, something important. 7 p.m. tonight, family dinner. Both of you need to be here." Judith nodded approval, not threatening. I hit send. 3 dots appeared. "Okay, Mom, we'll be there. Everything all right? We'll talk tonight." I set the phone down. 6 hours from now, they walk in thinking they're in control. 6 hours from now. Harold said they learned they never were. Tom opened his laptop. "Let me walk you through the confrontation. What to say, how to keep control." For 3 hours we planned. Tom coached me on the dialogue. Judith briefed Detective Collins. Harold tested every camera. At 10, they left for Harold's house across the street. I sat alone staring at my phone. The message thread with David, my son who would walk through my door in 9 hours. I didn't know if I could face him. Didn't know if my voice would hold when I showed him the videos. Didn't know if I could stay calm while giving him those 2 choices. But I knew one thing. Tonight this ended. For 4 months I'd been the victim, the target, the woman they thought they could erase. Tonight I'd be the one in control. And they would walk right into the trap I'd built, one video, one document, one piece of evidence at a time. Let them come. I was ready. Saturday, 10 o'clock to 6:30, the hours between strategy and execution. Harold spent the morning checking every camera. Living room, kitchen, hallway, study, backdoor, staircase. 6 feeds, all active. He adjusted angles, tested audio levels, verified the backup recordings were running to 3 separate cloud servers. If they so much as breathe, he said, we'll have it. Tom and Judith moved their base of operations to Harold's house across the street. From his front window, they had a clear view of my door. Tom set up his laptop legal documents ready. Judith made calls her contacts at the district attorney's office, ensuring someone would be available tonight if needed. Detective Sarah Collins called at 11, Harold's former partner, 20 years on the force before she made detective. Her voice was steady, professional. Harold filled me in. "I've seen the preliminary evidence. When you're ready, I'll be 10 minutes away." "Thank you," I said. "Margaret, be careful. People do unpredictable things when they're cornered." I thought about David loosening those bolts, about Jessica switching my medication, about both of them forging my signature planning for my death. I'll be careful. The afternoon stretched long. I tried to eat lunch but couldn't. Tried to rest, but my mind wouldn't stop. At 3 o'clock, I sat at my kitchen table and practiced. What would I say first? How would I keep my voice steady when I showed them the videos? How would I keep my face neutral when David tried to explain, when Jessica tried to manipulate? I rehearsed it like lines in a play. "I know what you've done. I have proof. You have 2 choices. Calm, factual, no tears, no anger. just the cold presentation of evidence and consequences. Tom came over at 4 to review the plan one more time. You show them the videos. You tell them you know everything. Then you give them the choice, confess now or confess to the police with no cooperation from you. He looked at me seriously. If at any point you feel unsafe, you say the word Harold out loud. We'll be inside in 15 seconds. I understand. And Margaret, don't let them turn it around on you. Jessica will try. She'll say you're confused, you're misinterpreting, you're being manipulated by other people. Don't engage with that. Just show the next video. At 6:30, I went upstairs to change. I chose a simple black dress, dignified, serious. Not mourning, I wasn't mourning anything tonight. Just a woman taking care of business. I came back down and set the table. 3 places. No warmth, no family touches, just plates, silverware, water glasses. A laptop positioned at the head of the table where I would sit. Harold came over one last time at 6:45. Cameras are recording. Tom and Judith are watching the feeds. Sarah's on standby. He paused. You don't have to do this. We can still just call the police. No, I need them to know I know. I need to see their faces when they realize they didn't win. He squeezed my shoulder. You're the strongest person I've ever met. After he left, I checked my phone. Detective Collins' number programmed in. 1 touch to call. Harold, Tom, and Judith watching from across the street. I wasn't alone. But in a few minutes, I would be in this room with the 2 people who'd spent 4 months trying to erase me from my own life. I stood in my dining room looking at the table I'd set, the chair where David would sit, the chair where Jessica would sit, the laptop that held their crimes. My hands were steady, my mind was clear. At 6:58, I saw headlights pull into my driveway. At 6:59, I heard car doors close, footsteps on the walkway. At 7 o'clock exactly, the doorbell rang. At 7 o'clock exactly, the doorbell rang. I stood in the entry hall, my hand steady on the doorknob. Through the frosted glass, I could see 2 silhouettes. 4 months of evidence had led to this moment. I opened the door. David stood on the front step, hands in his pockets, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Jessica beside him wearing a cream sweater and dark jeans, her expression carefully arranged into concern. Hi, Mom. David leaned in for a hug. I allowed it briefly, my body rigid. Evening. My voice came out flat controlled. I stepped aside. Come in. Jessica touched my arm as she passed. How are you feeling? You sounded tired on the phone. I closed the door behind them, the lock clicking into place. Somewhere in Harold's house across the street, 3 people were watching the live feed. 6 cameras throughout my home were recording every word, every gesture. I'm fine. I gestured toward the dining room. Please sit down. The dining room lights were bright, almost clinical. I'd set the table for 3 no flowers, no candles, just white plates and silverware. The laptop sat closed at the head of the table, waiting. David pulled out a chair for Jessica, then took the seat beside her. They sat across from me, a united front. I remained standing. Can I get you anything to drink? The words were automatic, a habit from decades of hosting, but my tone held no warmth. Water's fine. Jessica said, her eyes scanning the room, looking for what I wondered. Evidence that I was losing my mind. Signs of the accidents they'd orchestrated. I brought 3 glasses from the kitchen, set them down without ceremony, and finally sat. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. David cleared his throat. So, Mom, what did you want to talk about? Your text sounded urgent. I took a slow sip of water, looked at him over the rim of the glass. My son. The boy I'd raised, taught to tie his shoes, helped with homework, celebrated every milestone. The man who'd loosened the bolts on my staircase railing while his wife held the flashlight. After dinner, I said, this conversation can't be rushed. Jessica's fingers drummed once on the table before she caught herself. We're worried about you. Living alone in this big house. I'm not alone. The words came out sharper than intended. I softened my tone just slightly. Harold checks in every day. I have friends. Of course, David said quickly. We just meant we care about you. Want to make sure you're safe. Safe. The word hung in the air between us. I thought of the gas stove Jessica had turned on without lighting, the medication she'd switched to quadruple the dosage, the forged will with my signature that I couldn't possibly have signed because I'd been in Seattle that day. I appreciate your concern. I set my glass down with deliberate care. Tell me, Jessica, how is work going? She blinked at the subject change. Fine, busy, you know. And you, David, everything all right with you? He nodded too quickly. Yeah, everything's good. No problems, nothing stressing you out. A glance passed between them, quick as a heartbeat. Jessica's hand moved to touch David's arm, a reassuring gesture, or a warning. We're fine, Mom, David said, just the usual stuff. I smiled, then a cold thing that never touched my eyes. Good. I'd hate to think you were under any kind of pressure. Jessica leaned forward slightly. Mom, did you use the stairs last night? The railing, did you notice anything wrong with it? The question confirmed everything. She needed to know if her plan had worked, if I'd fallen, if I was injured enough to justify the emergency conservatorship they discussed on camera. I looked directly at her, held her gaze until she shifted in her seat. The railing is very solid, I said slowly. I checked it thoroughly, multiple times. Her face went pale. David's jaw tightened. They were starting to understand something was wrong, but they had no idea how much I knew. I stood slowly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. David and Jessica watched as I crossed to the dining room door and closed it. Not a slam, just a quiet, deliberate click. Then I turned the lock. Jessica's eyes widened. Mom, what are you— Sit down. My voice was steady, cold. I returned to the table and opened the laptop, angling the screen toward them. I want to show you something. My finger hovered over the trackpad, 4 months of evidence organized in dated folders. I clicked the first file. The screen filled with grainy footage from my study. Thursday night, week 1. David and Jessica appeared moving through the dark room, their voices clear through the audio feed Tom had installed. Jessica's voice came through the speakers. How fast can we move her? David on screen. People agree when they feel unsafe, when they stop trusting their own minds. Jessica again, accidents happen, memory fails, 3-4 months tops. I watched David's face as he watched himself on the screen. The color drained from his cheeks. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Mom, his voice cracked. How did you get this? I paused the video. Hidden cameras. 5 of them. I had them installed the first week. I let that sink in. After Harold showed me the footage from his Ring doorbell, your late-night visits, the bags you carried out, Jessica found her voice. You've been spying on us, documenting. I corrected. There's a difference. I clicked the next file. The kitchen camera, Sunday dinner week 3. The timestamp read 6:47 p.m. Jessica on screen, glancing toward the doorway, then reaching for the stove. Turning the burner dial. Gas hissing. No flame. She walked away. No. Jessica's voice was sharp, desperate. That was an accident. You forgot to light it. You even admitted— I didn't forget anything. I stopped the video. I know exactly what you did. The third video loaded automatically. The staircase camera, week 4, Friday night. David kneeling at the second floor landing. Jessica beside him holding a flashlight. A wrench in David's hands. The sound of metal on metal as he loosened bolt after bolt. Jessica's voice through the speakers. Not too loose. Has to look normal. David's voice. 6 bolts should do it. David shot to his feet, the chair clattering backward. Mom, please, you have to understand, Jessica made me. She said if we didn't— Sit down. Something in my tone made him freeze. He righted his chair and sat his face ashen. I wasn't finished. From my cardigan pocket, I pulled out my phone and opened the photos. Turned it toward them. The medication bottle label clearly showing 10 milligrams. Beside it, a close-up of a pill unmistakably marked 40 milligrams. Carol Henderson examined these, I said. She's a retired pharmacist. She also wrote a notarized affidavit confirming that someone tampered with my blood pressure medication. Quadruple the prescribed dose. Jessica's hands were shaking now. She clasped them together in her lap. I set down the phone and picked up a manila folder from beneath the laptop, opened it. The forged will on top my signature wrong in ways only I would notice. Beneath it, boarding passes for Seattle. Hotel receipt from the Fairmont Olympic. Credit card statement showing transactions in Seattle on April 8th, the same date on the fraudulent will. I couldn't have signed this, I said quietly, because I was 3 states away. The final video played without my prompting. David and Jessica in my study practicing signatures, John Miller, Sarah Johnson, witnesses who never existed. David put his head in his hands. Jessica leaned forward, trying to regain control. You can't prove any of this. It's just... I have attorneys, I interrupted. Judith Freeman and Tom Bradley. I have witnesses. Harold Morrison, Carol Henderson. And I have 4 months of documented evidence timestamped and backed up to 3 separate cloud servers. I picked up my phone again, held it up so they could see Detective Sarah Collins' number on the screen 1 tap away. Now, I said, my voice like ice, you have 2 choices. If you're still here with me, drop a comment right now. I need to know you're still with me on this journey. And tell me, if you were in my position holding that phone with Detective Collins' number ready, what would your 2 choices be? What would you say to them in this moment? Because what happens next, it's the moment everything changes. The moment 4 months of silence becomes 4 minutes of reckoning. Quick note before we continue, the next part of this story contains some fictionalized elements for dramatic effect. If you'd prefer not to hear it, feel free to stop here. But if you want to see how this ends, stay with me. I held the phone steady, Detective Collins' number glowing on the screen. 2 choices, choose now. Choice 1, confess everything on camera. Full details. Then I call police, you cooperate. Your honesty might matter to a judge. I paused. Choice 2, refuse. I call anyway and push for maximum sentences. 10 seconds of silence. Then Jessica exploded. Who do you think you are? We're your family. Family doesn't plot harm. You chose money. David's face crumpled. Mom, I'm sorry. I owe $95,000. Vinny's people threatened to break my legs. So you chose to let me die instead. No answer, just tears. Jessica's voice turned soft, manipulative. David goes to prison if you do this. Can you really destroy your only son? 4 months ago, that might have worked. My son died the night he signed John Miller on that forged will. I pressed call. 2 rings. Detective Collins, they're here. Evidence ready. 8 minutes. I set the phone down. Sit quietly or make it worse. Jessica lunged for the door. The lock held. She yanked frantically. Let me out. Citizen's arrest. You're detained until police arrive. Jessica paced. David sat frozen. I waited. At 8:17 p.m., red and blue lights swept the windows. I opened the door. Detective Sarah Collins stood with 2 officers. Dining room. Collins nodded. Wait in the living room, Mrs. Sullivan. I stepped aside. Collins's voice carried clearly. Jessica Martinez, David Sullivan, you're under arrest. Miranda warnings, Jessica's protests, David's sobs. Handcuffs clicked. They led Jessica past me. She screamed, You'll die alone and miserable. I met her eyes. But I'll die as myself, not your puppet. David didn't look at me, head down, face hidden. The door closed. Silence. Harold emerged from the kitchen. Tom and Judith came through the back. You did it, Harold said. I nodded. It's over. The charges are solid, Judith said. Elder abuse, forgery, assault, medication tampering. They'll face years. I sank into the armchair, watching the police cars disappear. The DA wants your statement tomorrow, Tom said. Bring everything, journal, affidavit, videos. It's organized. Harold brought tea. I held the warm cup but didn't drink. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about it. Not triumphant, not relieved. Empty. I feel old. Judith touched my shoulder. You survived. That matters. 4 months ago, they thought I'd be dead or locked away. I looked at my 3 allies. Instead, they're in custody. Justice, Tom said. Justice, I echoed. But it felt like loss. Loss of the son I thought I'd raised. Loss of the family I believed we were. Harold stayed until midnight. Tom and Judith left with promises to return for the DA meeting. Alone, I walked through the quiet house, past the dining room where it unfolded, past the sabotage staircase, up to my bedroom. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough during 4 months of watching my son plot against me. Tonight, I lay in my own bed in my own house, knowing tomorrow I'd wake up safe. That was enough. 1 year later, I'm 61 now. My hair has more silver, but my hands are steady as I pour morning coffee. The house is quiet in the way I've learned to appreciate, not empty, just peaceful. The trial concluded 6 months after that Saturday night. I testified for 3 hours, walking the jury through every video, every document, every calculated move David and Jessica had made. The evidence spoke for itself. Jessica received 9 years. She'll serve at least 6 before parole consideration. $30,000 in restitution, a permanent restraining order. She's forbidden from ever serving as anyone's guardian or holding power of attorney. David got 5 years, 3 mandatory before parole, $25,000 in restitution, the same restraining order, the same prohibitions. Both were legally disinherited. The judge made it official, though my new will, drafted by Judith, witnessed by Harold and Carol, notarized and filed, had already accomplished that. I don't think about them every day anymore. Some days I go hours without remembering. But this morning, standing in my kitchen, I think about David's letters. He's written 4 times from prison. The envelopes arrive with the facility's return address stamped in the corner. I recognize his handwriting on the front neater now, more careful, as if penmanship might earn redemption. I haven't opened any of them. They sit in a drawer in my study, sealed. I tell myself I'll read them someday. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Harold asked me last Sunday over coffee, our new routine every week at the corner cafe, whether I planned to forgive. I'd stirred my latte watching the foam swirl. I think about it every day, I admitted. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone back into your life. David chose money over my survival. I chose to survive. Those choices have consequences. Harold nodded. He understood. He always does. My life now looks nothing like it did 2 years ago. I volunteer at the library on Tuesday mornings, helping seniors navigate computers and email. I joined the county's Elder Justice Coalition. We advocate for protective legislation and support victims of financial abuse. Last month, I testified before the state legislature about gaps in conservatorship oversight. My story, stripped of names and identifying details, became part of the public record. If my nightmare can prevent someone else's, then maybe it meant something. I went to Alaska in July. Took a cruise I'd dreamed about for decades, but never scheduled because David always said we'd go someday as a family. I went alone, watched glaciers calve into the sea, stood on deck at midnight under sunlight that never set. I came home lighter. Yesterday I attended an art exhibition downtown, bought a small watercolor of a lighthouse solitary standing firm against waves. It hangs in my bedroom now, where I see it first thing every morning. Harold still checks the cameras weekly. Tom and Judith visit monthly. Carol and I have lunch every other Thursday. I have people. I have purpose. I have my life. This morning after coffee, I went into the garden. The roses are blooming, the pink heirloom I planted 40 years ago, the yellow sunsprite from my 50th birthday, the coral tropicana that survived the hard freeze 3 winters back. I knelt in the soil, pruning shears in hand, and tended them the way I always have. The way I did that Tuesday morning when Harold crossed the street to change everything. People ask if I regret it, regret losing my son. Yes, every single day. Regret fighting to survive. Never. David made his choices. I made mine. He chose to risk my life for money. I chose to live. This house is still mine. This life is still mine. And I'll live every day of it fully, intentionally, gratefully. Because I fought too hard to keep them. I stand, brush dirt from my knees, and look at the roses. They'll bloom all summer if I care for them. And I will. Looking back on this year, I've learned that family drama stories like mine aren't as rare as we'd hope. Too many grandma stories involve financial abuse, manipulation, and betrayal by the people who should protect us most. I share my story not for sympathy, but as a warning. My advice: don't be like me. Don't wait until you're in danger to protect yourself. Don't ignore the red flags because you love someone. Don't give anyone, even family, unchecked access to your home, your finances, or your trust. I gave my son a key out of love. He used it as a weapon. The lesson I learned the hardest way: love does not require you to be a victim. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's survival. Documenting abuse isn't paranoia, it's wisdom. And choosing yourself over toxic family isn't selfishness, it's self-preservation. I once believed that family drama stories only happened to other people, that grandma stories of elder abuse were exaggerated or rare. But they're not. These grandma stories are happening every day in quiet neighborhoods behind closed doors. It happened to me in my own home by my own son. But God gave me the strength to fight back when I could have given up. Faith kept me sane through the darkest nights. If you're facing anything similar, please act early. Install cameras if you feel unsafe. Consult an attorney. Tell someone you trust. Don't wait until the plot reaches its final stage. These family drama stories end in tragedy far too often, but they don't have to. I'm still here, still in my home, still tending my roses, and I hope my story helps someone else survive theirs. Final note. This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely useful. If this style doesn't suit you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.